Bruni is Assistant Professor of Italian Language and Culture, Intercultural Communication and Engagement Citizenship at University College Utrecht in the Netherlands, where she is also an academic advisor. Since her appointment at Utrecht University, she has been developing and teaching several bachelor's and master's courses on Italian language, Italian linguistics, translation studies, and intercultural communication. In her capacity as coordinator of the foreign language and culture courses, she has developed a keen interest in integrating the teaching of cultural literacy and intercultural competence into foreign language teaching, especially at beginner level. Tatiana was born and grew up in Italy, where she studied at the University of Bologna before moving to the Netherlands in 1989 to complete her studies. She has a bachelor in Italian language and culture and a master in translation studies from Utrecht University. In 2019, she was awarded a master's in educational research from Durham University in the UK, where she also completed a PhD in education in 2025. In her doctoral research, she investigated the co-design with students of a new course in intercultural communication to find out how this teacher-student partnership contributed to developing capabilities and attitudes for engaged citizenship. She has conducted her research from a practitioner inquiry perspective. Her research interests and working experience range from Italian language and culture to second and foreign language acquisition, second and foreign language teaching, critical intercultural communication, sociolinguistics, intercultural communication, and competence, translation studies, and threshold concepts. Most recently, her teaching and research are embedded in critical pedagogy and participatory methods with attention for fields of study and practice such as student engagement, student voice, partnership, community engagement, community-engaged learning, and human development and capabilities approach. And today, the discussant will be Dr. Judith. Dr. Judith is a postdoctoral research under SARChI Chair in Higher Education Human Development at the University of the Free State, South Africa. She holds a PhD in Development Studies, a Master's of Education in Educational Management, a Bachelor of Education in Educational Leadership, and a Diploma in Education. Her research focuses on education policy and higher education transformation in the Global South, drawing on the capability approach to explore social justice and human development issues in teaching and learning for students and staff, economic and overall well-being. She's currently working on a book titled Reimagining Higher Education for Human Development in the Global South. So for this presentation today, Dr. Tatiana will have 30 minutes for the presentation. Thereafter, we'll have our discussant, Dr. Judith, with the discussion for 10 minutes. And then thereafter, we'll have a question and answer session. But the ground rule first, please keep your mics on mute when online, and we'll have the opportunity to talk and ask questions during the session. Without wasting any time, Dr. Tatiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me for this series and for the kind introduction. I just want to say that I'm really delighted to be here, and that, as you've heard from my biography, I had done my PhD quite late in my career, so it's just very fresh. And indeed, this presentation is about some of the, let's say, the main features of my research for my PhD, which was indeed in international and intercultural education at Durham University. And so I've tried to kind of give you a glimpse of the research and touching a bit more on the some of the outcomes, and especially on the capabilities, because that's the focus, of course, of your own research as well as a center. But bear with me, because I may have left out some elements of the research and of the process, and you may ask about it in the questions if there is anything that I haven't told you already and that you want to tell or to ask. So what this, what I will try to tell you now is indeed a bit who I am. I have heard a bit, so it's just giving you the context of it. A short overview of the research and why I've addressed this intercultural and global competence and global citizenship at my undergraduate college, and why I thought of engaging students in a partnership and a teacher-student partnership, and what are the theoretical underpinnings of my choice, and then how this process, these partnerships kind of worked out, what were the processes and outcomes. And then I go a bit more in depth into the let's say the analysis of the data that I've collected and the thematic analysis that I've done, focusing especially on developing and searching for capabilities in my data, and the model that I've created of these specific capabilities for students as partners in co-creating content at universities. And then I want to finish by highlighting some of the outcomes, and especially if the main goal that I had to enhance the critical cosmopolitan citizenship capabilities of students have been met or not. And was it a transformative experience for the students and for me or not? And then I will conclude. So you have heard that I am teaching and living in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, which is in the center of the country. And I teach at this undergraduate program. It's an international college. It's a honors college of a main university, which is Utrecht University. And it's a separate faculty, basically, of the university, where we have the more American style liberal arts program, and it's taught in English in contrast to many of the other bachelor programs who are taught, of course, in the national language Dutch. This has been from the outset a program that would attract also international students. So our small campus, about 750, 800 students, is a kind of international campus. With different languages and different backgrounds, although the teaching and the communication is mainly in English. And indeed, I wanted to develop the capabilities for critical and engaged citizenship. So why that? So my research is about indeed developing these capabilities because I think that it is important that students are equipped in evolving as citizens. They are, of course, we are all already citizens from the moment we are born and the moment you become a sentient being and you start socializing in the world around you. So to consider students as citizens of the future is a bit odd. They are already citizens. And so for me, how do I engage students as citizens while they are studying? Was one of the main questions that I asked myself for my own teaching. And I thought that this process of engaging them as partners would enable them to develop a bit further or to enhance those identities and capabilities for being an engaged citizen, not just a citizen with rights, but also a citizen who takes up their responsibility in society and look forward to improve society around them. So where I started was indeed, what do we say at our college? So what are the, in the educational philosophy of my college, the learning outcomes related to liberal arts and sciences for citizenship? So we want the students to develop these engaged citizenship skills because we think that it is essential for contemporary democratic society. And we want students to also indeed contribute, be able to contribute to solving societal issues. But this is what we say in writing, what we aim at doing. But what I wanted to know and I wanted to work on is how does this resonate with students themselves? How do they see themselves as citizens? How do their own goal for the future match or not with our vision of how an engaged citizen should be? So this is why I thought that engaging students in a reflection on those goals, and then from there, looking at what the changes could be in the curriculum or in the teaching philosophy of the college, could be to, let's say, match better how they wanted to be in the future, what their aims are for the future, how we teach at our college. So what I did was indeed to try to connect these institutional aims that have been written many years before and from time to time are redeveloped with students' goals and needs in the present and in the future. So I wanted to give students the opportunity to practice with democratic participation within the university and within the learning environment. We tell students a lot about, indeed, societal engagement, but I think that the educational environment, the university, is also society, and they can also engage in democratic participation within the university. And I see that as a kind of laboratory for democratic practices. So what room could I develop within my teaching practice to provide the students this specific space? And I decided that it would be through the co-creation of curriculum of knowledge. Often students can fill in student surveys about how a course was. They are sometimes involved in developing, maybe more in evaluating programs, but very seldom they are also engaged in really creating curriculum and creating knowledge at a more policy level. So that's where I wanted the students to collaborate with me to see if this would be a transformative experience for them. So when I started looking at this from my own point of view as a practitioner, so in my own courses or in my own teaching practice, I looked at different, let's say, fields. All related to critical pedagogy, so all related to this practice of seeing students and teachers as learning from each other and reflecting on what they are learning together. So the first framework that I looked at, of course, was the critical cosmopolitan citizenship, because that's for me the key for engaged citizenship, that you are a critical a citizen towards yourself and towards the others. And I found this American scholar, Tammy Burke, with this very specific notion of critical cosmopolitan citizenship as a type of citizenship that is able to acknowledge those multiple civic identities that we all have, and also forms of belonging that can be national, transnational, or even more encompassing also non-humans, for example. Then I looked at the field of student as partners, the so-called SAP. And this is, of course, very much related to education. So students as partner, both in research, in teaching, in learning, and in policy within an educational environment. And so how do the students contribute and share power with staff in educational processes? Then, of course, I looked also at the capabilities approach. So how can capabilities approach framework be, let's say, applied? And how can I expand capabilities for engaged citizenship? And in this case, especially the research that Melanie Walker has done with Lotz was a kind of pivotal for me. And then the final one was indeed education through democracy. So where indeed, as I said, the students are already citizens. So you co-teach together and you co-learn together, and you are together in this process in class. And then this can be a transformative experience for both the teacher and the students, where this consciousness is awakened and developed further. So I chose, of course, then for a participatory approach. And what do I mean when I say, for me, in this specific research, participatory approach? So we try to work as equal partners in course co-creation, and equal here means that everyone has the same opportunities to bring in their own knowledge and skills. Of course, there is a differential between what I know as a teacher and what I can, the power that I have as a teacher. But the idea is indeed to try to negotiate those roles in a collaborative process where everyone has the possibility to bring in experiences, knowledge, goals, and also critical points, and be acknowledged by the others. Indeed, again, there's a democratic practice, so citizenship as practice, so not as a goal for the future, but something that we do in class as well, of outside class. And then this would hopefully lead to agency development, students taking responsibility for course design and expanding their capability. So especially this issue of responsibility, not giving, but for students to take responsibility was a very important one. So it's not me lending them responsibility, but providing them opportunities for them to choose if they wanted to take responsibility or not in courses, of in course design. So I set up this as a participatory action research project through the partnership. And this is a definition of student-teacher partnership that was my starting point, as I said. So everyone contributes equally, although not necessarily in the same way. And in this field of students as partners, this is an important framework of, they call them values, but they are basically attitudes and dispositions for student engagement. So you have trust, courage, plurality, responsibility, authenticity, honesty, inclusivity, reciprocity, and empowerment. And of course, these values and dispositions are very similar to the capabilities, the participatory capabilities, as for example, developed by Frediani and Boni, that we will see later in a slide. And my field is in this part, curriculum design and pedagogy consultancy. But as you can see, there are many other fields where students can be engaged actively in university. But for me, there was the students as pedagogic consultancy. So what we did, I had 6 students in the second and in the third and final year, and graduate students as a teaching assistant. We came together outside of classes, so in the evening for 9 meetings of very long, dense meetings in a fall semester some years ago, or in the spring semester some years ago, and it was considered a credit-bearing internship so that I could give the students something back for their time. And we don't have a paid scheme for internship at university at this small scale. So it was a pass-fail, so they didn't have to do exam also, but participating and engaging was enough for them to, let's say, pass the course. And we worked in small group, and so this was the participatory element. So what did we do? We started with analyzing the institutional aims, as I said. We create our working definition of global citizenship, negotiated, and from there we started defining and designing a new course in intercultural communication, which is a course that I'm still teaching now. So the course was proposed to the Board of Studies. There were some negotiation for a couple of years on how to realize it, but I'm glad to say that it was possible for me to teach the course that I created with the students. So I want to skip a couple. So this was comparing definition, defining goals for the course, creating a cognitive alignment between the goals and the activity that we were aiming at, and then writing a course proposal, course description of the course. This is in a nutshell what we did in the 9 weeks. So what did I then have as data for my research? I collected data before we started the internship, especially application forms where the students had already indicated what the aims were, what they would bring in, what they hoped to achieve after the partnership and with the partnerships. Then I had reflective journals that the students wrote after the partnership, and we did 2 focus groups to evaluate the partnership together, where I was a participant and not a moderator. And then I have all kinds of other data related to the process, minutes, outcomes, my field notes, and so forth. So I had a huge amount of data, and I ran 2 rounds of different data analysis, a thematic data analysis. So a first round was inductive, just thematic analysis, looking for themes that would come out, especially related to the goals of the student, the challenges of the partnership, the achievement the student felt they had. But I also wanted to look for capabilities more specifically. So I did a second round of, in this case, deductive thematic analysis, looking for evidence of capabilities. And for this, I use as a tool Frediani and Boni's participatory action research cube. So you have the 3 axes, the knowledge, the participation, and the action. So this was the tool that helped me in elaborating the data that I was analyzing and finding a structure in the capabilities that I was defining then. So these 3 axes, because they are developed for participatory research. So this was my first, let's say, data of tool for deductive analysis. So I looked at the literature and I pulled out a lot of lists of capabilities related in specific to higher education. Besides, of course, Marta Nussbaum one was more generic, and Lorella Terzi was more in primary education. The rest are more secondary or higher education capabilities. And then I had here the participatory capabilities by Alessandra Frediani. And these were the capabilities that I was looking at while still being open for other new capabilities. I also complemented those lists with the 9 values and norms that we have already seen, and that kind of overlap a lot with what's already in the list. So from here, I started developing my model, and this is the model of my capabilities. So the partnership needs to be built on authenticity, inclusivity, and trust, because without that, partnership inequality is very difficult to realize. Then I've found out that there are specific learning disposition, because the partnership, of course, in education, and you need to feel affiliation to education, to your partners in the partnership. And then what I call academic buoyancy. So the students developed a capability for negotiating roles and overcoming the, let's say, the challenges that we experienced during the partnership. Then there are the capabilities coming through the axis of the PAR cube, so different type of knowledge that I could see my data. And in the participation process, you have respect, dignity, recognition, narrative, imagination, and a new one, the red one, is the one that I found and I created myself because are specific for this partnership. Agentic engagement, so contributing actively to the partnership. And the same in public deliberation, so the actualization of those capabilities. There are several that are typical of a participatory research, but also we had ownership and pride, agentic choice, acting, and legacy and impact, because of course the students developed together with me a course that is taught to other students, as this created for them an amazing sense of pride. Even if the course was not fleshed out completely, they found it very important that they had a legacy, that they had an impact on how future students would, let's say, be getting some innovative type of teaching related to engaged citizenship. And all of these contributed, so these are basically capabilities that contributes to and that enables capabilities that are, so this one, these are capabilities that enable the three main capabilities that I was looking at, especially the critical cosmopolitan citizenship. And these are capture the transformative change which has happened. So what do I mean when I say that this is a critical cosmopolitan citizenship capability? I move because I'm almost done with my time to the slide with this one. Yeah. So the critical cosmopolitan citizenship capability is comprehensive of global understanding, so comprehending in terms of knowledge, but and affinity, how the world is, let's say, interdependent. What are the different constants that are interdependent? But also active participation. So developing skills for engagement in public sphere. And then you have ethical actions, so actions that aligns with the ideals, but also with moral guidelines. One of the things that the students realized was that they have grand ideals. They thought that they wanted, to fight for a better environment, for against the climate change. But then in daily life, they didn't do much about it. It was a lot in their head. So they decided that it is really important to reflect on your ideas and see how to put them in action. And the new course would be one way to start doing this exactly. And finally, being a citizen also means developing your voice. So being able and having the, let's say, the trust and the confidence to develop your, let's say, active voice in and outside classroom. So I just want to conclude by saying that one of the elements that I have seen is that during these 9 weeks, students were able to feel a bit more knowledgeable about, for example, course design. And this was something that prompted them to, for example, step up to a teacher to say, okay, listen, I think that maybe if you would do something different, it would work better in class, or this exam or this test doesn't seem to match well with what we've been doing. So they felt confident in speaking up to a teacher, to a staff member, because they felt that they had acquired the knowledge. The same was related to being able to say to other students, listen, I would expect you to do this. So this has been a difficult process, of course, to develop the courage to speak up in a, let's say, ethical and also conscious way, not just saying something, but saying something because you know how to support that. So I think that despite the different challenges that we had, the partnership was transformative, and the students got new perspective on what citizenship can mean to them, what engagement with others, is that being a citizen doesn't mean that you are a static person, but that you have always to relate and to reflect and to address issues around you. And indeed, taking up those responsibilities as educated intellectuals in their societal environment. So I will finish with this. Thank you very much. Maybe I'll get back to my, leave this one here.
Thank you, Dr. Bruni. We will have a discussion by Dr. Judith. 15 minutes, and Dr. Judith, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bruni. That was quite a thought-provoking presentation, and it was eye-catching. For me, I really enjoyed it. So here is my review. I will begin with what interested me. I also move on to what kind of unsettled me, that which kept me uneasy. And also I'll talk about what I'm puzzled with. And finally, I'll try to connect the presentation to the broader context of higher education. So let me begin with what I found particularly interesting in this paper. The idea of students working as pedagogical co-creators rather than just participants really stood out for me. This is a significant shift in agency. It positions students not simply as recipients of knowledge, but as partners in shaping it alongside their teachers. For me, this resonates with a broader thinking in higher education, moving away from teaching students toward a model of learning with students. Secondly, I would like to talk about the richness of the theoretical framing also struck me. The paper doesn't rely on one lens, but draws together students as partners, the capability approach, critical pedagogy, and cosmopolitan citizenship. Each framework alone is powerful. However, in your case, you try to put them together to create a multi-layered way of understanding partnership as not only pedagogical, but also ethical, political, and developmental. Another point that interested me was the idea of transformation at ontological and epistemological levels. This suggests that students were not just acquiring skills, but actually rethinking who they are, how they learn, and how they see themselves in society. That deeper identity level change, and I think it's one of those strongest arguments for student-teacher partnership. Then finally, I found it compelling that students were encouraged to reflect on the university's institutional goals of active citizenship to their own visions of citizenship. The tension between those two perspectives became fertile ground for growth, giving students both agency and the confidence to see themselves as potential change agents. Of course, some things bothered me, or at least they left me uneasy, as I have highlighted earlier. The first was the description of partnership as a troublesome practice. That phrase caught my attention, but I thought it wasn't fully unpacked. Where exactly was it troublesome? Was it in negotiating authority, in institutional resistance, in uneven participation? For me, the heart of partnership lies in how power is shared, or sometimes not shared. I would have liked to see more detail about those dynamics, because that's where the practice really becomes real. Secondly, while the findings are well presented, they felt more conceptual than empirical. I would have loved to hear more student voices directly through course and narratives. Without those, we miss the lived reality behind the themes. So the question of reciprocity also unsettled me. We are told this was a partnership, but how equal did it feel to the students themselves? Were their contributions taken seriously in moments of disagreement? The balance is vital. I wanted more clarity there. Additionally, how did you manage the dual role of being both a partner and the insider researcher, especially with the shifting roles of power? dynamics. Since students often expect guidance and structure, how was the balance negotiated?
Mhm.
And then the scalability. The work is in one course, but can it work across a faculty, an institution, or perhaps across different higher education spectrums? Or is it only sustainable as a small-scale experimental practice? To add on that question, can the model survive in countries where teacher morale is generally low, perhaps due to factors such as inadequate remuneration and other unfavorable conditions of service? If so, I would like to know. I usually want to draw from a context that I came from, that I know. I'm giving an example of Zimbabwe. There's been a long-standing as far as issues related to remuneration. So here, I'm not sure how that model would play out under those circumstances. I'm also wondering how exactly you drew your study sample, considering that there may be challenges in partnering with students who already have extensive experience with intercultural settings and encounters. Elaborate on the inclusion and the exclusion criteria you apply to the study sample. And I also noticed that the paper is largely silent on issues of inclusivity and equity in the cooperation process. Could you reflect on how students with diverse needs, such as those facing mental, social, or learning challenges, might be considered or supported in such partnership? Now, let me turn to what I'm still puzzled over. The idea of students developing a critical cosmopolitan disposition is exciting, but I'm curious, how exactly was this observed? Was it mainly through student self-reflection, or was there other evidence? I also wondered about the impact beyond the course. Did students take this refined sense of citizenship and put it into practice in their communities, in activism, or in their professional lives? Or was it more of a classroom insight that might or might not carry forward? And another puzzle is around the claim of transformation at an ontological and epistemological level. That's powerful language for me, but how do we know these changes are lasting and not context specific? What kind of longitudinal follow-up do we need to show that this transformation endures?
Mhm.
And then when I zoom out, I found myself connecting this discussion to the broader context we live in, which often are described as a VUCA world, the world full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Governments today increasingly look to higher education to develop economies to produce graduates who can drive growth and to stabilize societies in uncertain times. Universities are under pressure to be engines of innovation and employability. That's the backdrop against which models like teacher-student partnership must improve their worth. On the other hand, this makes the model incredibly relevant. If the world is uncertain and complex, then higher education should not only teach technical skills, but also cultivate adaptability, agency, critical consciousness, and the ability to work across differences. Pedagogical co-creation does precisely that. It prepares students to think critically, to act collaboratively, and to navigate complexity. On the other hand, I do wonder about its viability. In such a dialogic, relational, and sometimes slow practice survive in systems increasingly driven by metrics, outputs, and economic imperatives. If governments demand measurable productivity, can we defend practices that nurture dispositions like cosmopolitanism, critical consciousness, and deep transformation qualities that resist is quantification? So I'm left with a double question. Does the volatility of our times make these partnerships more necessary because they develop resilience and critical capacity? Or does it make them more vulnerable because institutions are under pressure? And do they invest in those kinds of practices that are not immediately measurable in economic terms? So, in summary, I was really interested in the vision of students as genuine co-creators and the rich theoretical framing. I was bothered by the lack of detail on the troublesome aspects, the missing voices of students, and questions of reciprocity and scale. And I remain puzzled about the depth and longevity of the claimed transformation as well as the viability of this model in the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous higher education landscape. And perhaps that's what makes the paper so valuable. It leaves us reflecting not only on what happened in our course, but also on what higher education can and should look like in an uncertain world we inhabit. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Judith, for such an insightful discussion. Would you like to, I'll give you a couple of minutes to respond to those questions, because I think there are some questions there.
Okay, thank you, Judith, very much. I think indeed that you raise a very interesting point that I also consider very much, especially when reading literature, we're talking to other scholars who are involved in student as partner and in student-teacher partnership, and so about the scale. And about indeed the feasibility and viability of such a model, which is quite intensive, both for teachers and for students, to let's say to be expanded to full class, for example, full class engagement or full cohort engagement. I have to say that there are many examples in other universities, mostly in the UK, but not only. Also, for example, in Australia and New Zealand, and so where indeed there are different skills where they try to engage students as co-creators, both of full programs and of courses, but also of different initiatives. What they, for example, have, what I didn't have in my small college, for example, was the possibility to pay student as a curricular co-creation or just as expert students, so to have a pay scheme. Because of course I also reflected on the fact, okay, who is admitted or who not in such a partnership. I know, for example, if students are also in my college, which is considered a quite privileged college, but there are students on scholarship or students who in their free time might need to work to sustain themselves, and so they might miss out possibility that are outside of class that could be important for them. So when talking about indeed a student as partners, there is a lot of reflection on how can you as a institution make sure that there is inclusivity, especially for students who are in financial need, or students who are maybe having a family and have to juggle different roles, but also indeed how do you appreciate students' input on a larger scale. But if you are interested, there are quite some examples of a full class engagement or full courts engagement, exactly because of this ethical aspect of being able to not offer this type of education only to a small selected group. In theory, my own partnership was open to everyone, but because it was extracurricular, people had many other things, so I ended up with 7 students applying and 6 staying. I had, of course, hoped for many more, but it was also the very first time that something similar in this fashion was done, so it was a kind of pioneering. So that's why it was a very small, but from there, our university started working a bit more with the concept indeed of, in general, of societal engagement of students, so to embed community engaged learning into courses. So this was one of the, let's say, steps that I've also taken, and now the university is having that as a main aim. But I still think that the co-creation of content is still lacking. So there's a lot of projection towards society, but still not enough in involving students into co-creation. At my college, we still have more example of this that are going on, students working with teachers, but in the other parts of the university, that's still something that is kind of lacking, I think. And then you talked about the troublesome. What was troublesome? So maybe I just indeed, do you see on my just my side that I skipped? But these were the challenges. So indeed, the role transition was one. So from the enthusiasm that the students had when they say, okay, we can be equal partners. But then indeed, if, in their reflection later on in the focus group, one of the things that came out was that they still had expected a lot of guidance from me. And at one point, especially when the exam started, when they were busy with other stuff, they wanted me as a teacher to step in. And I said, yeah, but I am a partner. We have to negotiate how we move forward. But they wanted, when they were in need of time or so, they wanted direction. So this was something we reflected, how it is nice to get the responsibility, but it's also sometimes difficult to navigate. So that's why the reflection on expectations is very important. Keeping checking if everyone is still thinking in the same way, and if there are things that needs to be changed. For example, student had this brilliant idea at the beginning. Every session, a different person would be the chair of the meeting, and someone would take notes and divide up the work for the next time. It happened twice. And then everyone was waiting for me to tell, okay, the next one to chair would be this person. And I waited for them because in theory, that was their idea to make it democratic. So here was really difficult. And then what still played a very important role was the gap in knowledge, because this was not a part of a partnership was not with students who are studying intercultural communication or global citizenship. They were studying mathematics, physics, politics. So they didn't have let's say, academic knowledge about the field. So before they got enough knowledge to feel that they could contribute in terms of content, this took a bit of a time, and this gap made indeed the role negotiation and the power negotiation more difficult, until we started designing the course in practice and saying, okay, this is what we are going to do. Then they felt again that they were expert as being students. So this one. And of course, the building confidence and voice, it takes time. And especially within the partnership towards me, but also towards each other, keeping each other accountable was not easy. They found it easier to say to me what they expect than to each other, because it's not done among students to say, oh, you should have read this, or you should have done this, but you didn't. So now we are in trouble. So this was also a realization how difficult it was for them to keep each other accountable and to find the voice towards each other as partners. So yeah, and this was the part of the reciprocity. So if you want to be in there together, indeed, these are challenges that we needed to kind of navigate. And of course, we had a very short period, 9 weeks. But of course, especially a longer partnership, it's very important to keep checking if people still feel heard enough. This was the case for us. And let's say that in the data, one of the themes is indeed that we somehow made it possible for everyone to feel heard, to feel that their input was taken on board seriously. Maybe discarded because there was better options, but no one felt as if they were not listened to and understood. So the reciprocity was something we were able to build, but definitely it wasn't a full, let's say, equal partnership, because still the difference in power was somewhere there. We worked around it, we tried to do our best, but you can't say that we were always equal partners. That would be what came out of the reflections.
Thank you, Doctor, for your responses. I think now we'll have time for a couple of questions from all participants and from the room. And anyone who has questions online, I think we start online and then we'll move to the room. But if there's no question online, then we have a couple of hands in the room. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bruni. I was only surprised that in trying to lay foundation on the idea of co-creators of knowledge, there were no mention of scholars, for instance, Paulo Freire, who talked about in his Pedagogy of the Oppressed in 1968, actually laid foundation about how knowledge is co-created between the learner and the students. It wasn't mentioned, perhaps maybe because I don't have access to the material, but I didn't hear a mention of it. And secondly, I also thought that the work of John Dewey, the educator and scholar of democracy and education, which kind of complement the work of Paulo Freire, would have also been a strong foundation to pass a basis. So I just want to make it.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comment, and you're very.
So before you move on, we have another comment so that you address to me online.
Okay, yeah.
From who's to me, he says, they say regarding partnership challenges, knowledge gaps are something I struggle with in my own interdisciplinary research. It's presumed hierarchies of knowledge, which really inhibits how people feel equal in partnership. Do you have any reflections about this? And then maybe you can take both.
Yeah. Okay, so about the first comment, thank you very much. Of course, Paulo Freire and John Dewey are very much foundational to my research. They are in my literature review, but also I mentioned a couple of names that were focusing a bit more on cosmopolitan citizenship, but they are all based on critical pedagogy and are all based on Paulo Freire and John Dewey for sure. And also in some of the slides that I may not have shown, there is also a Dutch educational philosopher, Geert Bista. And he's also very much into, indeed, this notion of democracy in practice. So if you haven't read Geert Bista, I would definitely suggest to you, because it builds up on that with a lot of practical issues, but also a lot of philosophical reflection on what it means to be a teacher. And one of the things that he says, for example, is that you are there to help students, let's say, get out what is already inside them, but while you're still a teacher. So it's a very interesting component, but definitely Freire and Dewey are very foundational to everything that I've read in my literature review time, and that I've also mentioned in my PhD dissertation. Thank you. And then the comment about, indeed, the gap in, let's say, let me check the chat. Knowledge gap. So there are this hierarchy of knowledge. So one of the things that I've tried, of course, to discuss with students are indeed the different type of knowledge. It's also reflected in the model. So indeed, the content knowledge was at the gap. But what we tried to work a bit more on was indeed the experiential knowledge of students as being students. So they were the student expert. They were also the expert of being a young people in comparison to me. So that's why there was also this interest in how they wanted the future to be for them, how they wanted to be in the future. So in this case, it was not about hierarchy of knowledge, that my knowledge was better. It were different type of knowledge. I had more of the pedagogical knowledge that I tried to transfer with exercising, with indeed telling them about cognitive alignment, and so to empower them a bit more in what it means to be creating a course and what is important in a course. And then we tried to really work with their experiential knowledge of young citizens, but also students. What are students interested in now? So for this was what I think important, to acknowledge the student as experts and whatever, but also some of them had many more intercultural experience than I had. Some of them had lived in different continents, but they also especially had training in, for example, cultural mediation already at a very young age. And so this was very important to acknowledge and to make use of this knowledge. So yeah, it was not per se a hierarchy, but it was more two different type of knowledge. So the content and pedagogy versus the experiential knowledge that needed to be integrated. And it was not always easy, but that I would say the key. Yeah. And then there is another one. Yeah.
Yes, we have Carlos online.
Yeah.
Carlos would like to thank you for the presentation, and then ask. They are wondering if in the case study there are any personal conversion factors among the students that have enhanced or inhibited the transformation you mentioned. And then we have two other questions in the room. Maybe we could just take three of them, and then you can answer them at once. Yes.
Great.
No. Okay, no, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doc. I have one question, but it's also from a reflective of what Dr. Judith was mentioning about you as a partner and also as a researcher, and how was that negotiated. But basically, I want to go to your sampling, where the students that you were using, part of the student in your class, meaning that you are teaching them. Why am I asking this question? You mentioned in your presentation that there is a pass and a fail. So I'm not sure if this pass and a fail is part of you remunerating these students, and what is the pass or fail? Is it part of the course that they are developing, or it's separate from their curriculum? And if that is the case, how ethical is that within the Netherlands higher education? Can you just say, okay, because you were part of the focus group, therefore I'm giving you a 50%, you are going to pass this specific module? I didn't understand that part. Thank you.
Yes, and Gloria?
Okay. Thank you so much, Doc, for your presentation. I enjoyed it. Mine is not really about the content, but it's about the structure. I did enjoy like watching the images there. So I'm learning something from that. I have a question with regards to the theoretical framework. I saw that you had highlighted some as red and then others as blue. So I was just wondering, is it your own way of structuring the theoretical framework, or there was a reason behind that? Did they at a point merge or thinking when you were presenting? Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I think you can respond to three.
So you mean this slide?
Yes, please.
Yeah. No. So it was just to highlight the four different aspects. It's not that there is any criteria. I like to have some colors in that, and so, but there is no reason behind that. I also tried to make it visible, because I don't know how big the screen is there, so I try to make it as let's say visible as possible for you. I know from experience that sometimes when you are in the back of a room and the slides have a very small font and very light colors, it's very difficult to read. So it was just a way for me to highlight it for you. Okay, then I go. Yeah.
I was asking, like, how did you use the theoretical framework? Like the theory, the modules in did they merge at a point?
So I didn't understand you. It's a bit.
I'm asking, how did you use each of the the frameworks, how did you use them?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so the student as partners is the, let's say, the starting point. So how I decided to engage the students. So I wanted to create this opportunity for me and students to co-create together something. I had a very long negotiation with my board of studies about what I could do, because there were all kind of constraints about, I wanted to do something a semester long as a seminar and co-create something with that, but it was not possible. And then so it took almost 1 year. And so I said, okay, I wanted to engage students in co-creating a course. And then I had to decide, and that's also for Carlos the question, it was decided, oh no, so sorry for the other question in the room. It was decided that I could only do it as an extracurricular activity, because the students have a very dense course only. So student as partner was let's say, the way in which I gave form, I gave shape to the participatory action research. So I needed to find a way. It was not really research, it was engaging students. So students as partner is the form, the shape. Then by doing this, I think that I was able to teach through democracy. So by having students work with me, it was not that I was teaching about being global citizen, but we were trying to define and reflect on what it means to each of us to be an engaged citizen. So, and by being a partner with them, I try to show that there are ways in which you can also have a democratic aspect in your teaching. So that is not a knowledge transferring knowledge, but that indeed I valued what students could bring to class, and I wanted to ask to incorporate their ideas into the class. So that's the education through democracy. And this would be indeed to achieve what I think was for me the main goal of our college, to enhance critical cosmopolitan citizenship. And here, cosmopolitan because of this aspect of acknowledging that people are not static, have not static identities, but they are always changing. They can incorporate many different dimensions. So cosmopolitan, not in the sense of liberal, of this very contested notion of cosmopolitan as people who can travel around, but it's more about acknowledging that you can have different belongings. And so this is how I try to incorporate the different frameworks. Does it make sense for you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the question about indeed the, let's say, if the class was separate or not, it was indeed a internship, because the students were practicing with me, and it was not that they had to they could get credits by only participating to a focus group. It was pass-fail for one reason, because in theory I could have had it graded, but ethically it didn't make sense to work as equal partners for many weeks and then all at once become again the teacher who grades. They would have not created the trust and reciprocity. So that's why I negotiated with the Board of Studies the possibility to still give students credits for their time, but not with a grade, but as a pass-fail, so that they would feel that they didn't have to stop saying something in class because they were fearing that maybe then the grade would be lower. So they could just focus on the partnership, participating, doing a lot of work, because we did really a lot in between the sessions, writing this course description, motivating it, and so all outside of their regular courses, but without the fear of me having to give them a grade, which would be really unethical in a participatory exercise, I would say. And for Carlos, regarding the personal convention factors, yeah, one, definitely the gap in knowledge was something. So only when we managed to really, when the students realized that they had knowledge and they had experience that they could bring in as really experts, this was the moment when indeed they started realizing that there was a change in also in their attitude. Before, the first, let's say, half of the partnership was more conceptual. We read a lot, we discussed a lot, but they didn't see where it would go, and they didn't feel agency. Only when we did the exercise about what it means to design a course, when pedagogy was explained, and when they started seeing that they could rely on their experience of having taken courses in secondary school, and in university, this created a conversion factor that helped them to transform how they saw themselves as indeed partners and as contributors. Another aspect was indeed how much experience they had already, and especially reflection they have already had in the past about their role in society. Some of them, had those ideas about themselves, but never done anything in practice. And so it was a bit more difficult for them to really came into the role of consultants. While others who had been more reflective of what it means to take really actions, and also to the challenges that are with taking responsibility, could, let's say, get into this role a bit more, I would say. And there is a final question: there's paper or pot available? You have for now, no, it's just my my dissertation, so it's free, it's open, so I can send the link, but it's a full dissertation, so it's not a paper. So I don't know if you want to read 100,000 words, but feel free, of course. What I can do, of course, I can share here in the chat the model and the matrix with explanation of the capabilities, if you are interested. I think Judith has already received already, so one of you can definitely share it. That's definitely fine. That's my, let's say, my visualization of the capabilities. That's for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, for your wonderful presentation. I think this marked the end of today's session. Because of time, we have to end it here. And we do hope that the conversations go beyond the webinar today. And yeah, the engagement between you and those who are interested, I think will keep going on. But for today, this is the end of the session. Thank you for your presentation again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for the comments, both the people in the room and home. And I definitely would like to join one of the other seminars to listen to other people. So I will ask Daisy to send me the invitation along. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and have a lovely afternoon. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.